So again, good morning, everyone. So welcome to Chill Out, Take Control of Stress, and Thrive for a better work-life balance. Let's hope that we get there by the end of today's talk. Firstly, as I mentioned just a moment ago, this event is recorded. It will be hosted on YouTube on the CTL site, and everybody in the world will be able to see and hear today's event, but don't fret, the CTL site is not that popular. So I'm expecting only those individuals who are interested from our district will be looking at this, but just be aware that it will be on YouTube on the CTL website. Today's event provides education and mental wellness. So I'm going to be focusing on a positive approach for wellness. I want to make sure that you are aware this is based on psychological science. At the end, I have a ton of references, and if you want those, please email me and I will email those to you. Also, let's be clear, what I'm doing today is not therapy. For therapy, please see your doctor or your Los Rios Employee Assistance Program, and they can help you with therapy. But for today, again, the focus is on mental wellness, mental health, managing your stress. So by the end of this talk, what I want is for everybody here to feel calmer and more in control. I want you to be able to understand psychological stress, what it is, how it works. And also, I'm hoping that this talk will help you to change how you think about stress. So here's a spoiler. Stress isn't all bad. It has a really bad PR person that gives it a bad rep. But stress is definitely not all bad, and it can actually be useful. And how we think about stress is very influential in how we experience stress. By the end of this talk as well, you're going to have some practice with managing your thoughts and feelings. And then also, I want to encourage everyone to take consistent small actions for impactful positive change. I want to make it clear this is something that I do in my own life. I practice this. What I'm presenting today is what I practice, but also what I'm presenting today is the tip of the iceberg. There is so much here. We could spend a lot of time on this topic. We could spend an entire semester on this topic and not exhaust it. So be aware that today is just a small introduction to this topic. But I'm hoping by the end you are encouraged to take some small, impactful actions. The big takeaway is I want everyone to have a more satisfying experience at work and at home. Work and home are big parts of our lives. How long did we train and prepare to work as professors? How many people did we compete against? What did you have in mind when you just decided you wanted to go into teaching? And how's that gelling with the reality? And so what I want is for you to be able to better be able to manage your thoughts and behaviors, to feel calmer and more capable. What research shows is that if we do attend to our thoughts, we do attend to our behaviors consciously, we can feel calmer and we can feel more capable in our jobs and also at home in our roles as parents, as spouse, as daughter, as sister, as brother, uncle, etc. We can feel more capable and calmer. Also, I have a point of view of a systems point of view in that a change in one component does ripple and can cause systemic change. If you change how you are responding to stress, those around you may also change. The dynamics may also change. If you are feeling calmer and more capable, you are more likely to be more cooperative, more likely to help out and assist people, and less likely to feel overwhelmed and like, oh gosh, if somebody asks me one more thing, can you control if somebody's going to ask you one more thing? Absolutely not. But if you are feeling calmer, if you're feeling more capable, you're going to be able to manage that in a way that is more useful for you. So that's the big takeaway. All right, a little bit about me. Who is this person? Who is this person who is presenting? So like all of our students, I went to a community college as well. Like most of our students, I also worked my way through school. I found the academics weren't as challenging as just trying to survive. So like many of our students, I had a lot of hardships financially, and that was the most challenging for me. Just to give you one example, there was a time I had to choose between eating and textbooks. I chose textbooks and I showed up at my neighbor's house every night for dinner. and they got the hint and decided to invite me over. And then also, because they worked full time, we came up with a routine where I would show up. They would have all the ingredients for dinner out. They gave me a key to their house. I would prepare dinner, and then when they got home from work, we would all eat together. It worked out really well. After community college, I went to UC Santa Barbara. I got my degree in psychology. After that, I got my master's degree in counseling with an emphasis in marriage and family therapy. I was a licensed marriage and family therapist. I am no longer. I stopped renewing my license when I got tenure because one demanding career at a time is enough. so so I am not currently a licensed therapist, but that is my background. Also be aware that my background is the stereotype of a psychologist. Most of the folks in the psychology program at ARC are not therapists. They are not trained to assess, diagnose, or treat psychological disorders. Only a licensed therapist is able to do so. They have other specialties, but just so that you are aware, I am the stereotype. And then what I did in my work as a therapist was I worked in community mental health. I worked in a lot of nonprofits. I also had my own private practice. But I have to be honest, my love was the community mental health, the nonprofits that I worked in. I worked at LA Child Guidance Clinic in the Los Angeles area, where I was the lead therapist for an early intervention program. I also headed the largest Head Start agency in Los Angeles, and we had schools in South Central, we had schools in East LA, we had schools in Central LA. I loved that work. What I am most proud of with regards to that work is that I initiated and partnered with Children's Hospital Los Angeles, and we created the very first partnership between Head Start and Children's Hospital for a therapeutic preschool. I had noticed when I started at Head Start that there were a lot of children that had a lot of need for mental health services, and their families did as well. Anybody familiar with Head Start is likely aware that Head Start doesn't just serve the child, but the child is part of the larger family, and the entire family is addressed. And so that's one of the things that I'm most proud of, that we created this partnership with Children's Hospital and got a therapeutic preschool for those children. I've been a professor of psychology at ARC since 2002. What I am most proud of accomplishing here is, along with Dennis Lee, we started the LGBTQ plus Committee for Equity. And along with the students, we created the first Pride Center at ARC. Currently, just so that you know, in community colleges, there are only 5 Pride Centers in California. At the 115 community colleges, only 5 have Pride Centers. So the fact that we did that is something that I'm proud of. And I have to say what I'm most proud of with regards to that is I got out of the way. I was leading the committee, and I was trying to get trying to do things slowly. Let's just get a website, Pride Center, so that it's virtual, so we have something. And the students said, no way, we want a real Pride Center. And I took a deep breath and I said, you know what, let's just try it your way. They were right, we got a real Pride Center. And so I do think that that is a really, I personally think that a good leader not only gets out of the way, but also asks the question, how can I help you meet your goals? And I feel like I did that. And so I was very, very pleased that that was successful. And then in addition to teaching, I've also recently started my own business called Lotus Thrive, where I am doing mental wellness presentations and workshops for individuals as well as groups in the community. So that's a little bit about me. Now, what I want you to do just silently for just a moment is think about, what are you proud of accomplishing? Whether it's something personal, whether it's something professional, whether it's intimate, public, what is it that you're proud of? Just take a moment and think about that. And now think about, was it easy to accomplish? Or were there obstacles in your way that you had to overcome? In most instances, the things that we are proud of are the things that we had to work hard for, that we had to overcome obstacles for. One example with the Head Start and Children's Hospital partnership. there was a lot of people who didn't want me to do this because it hadn't ever been done before. And I didn't think that was a good enough reason to not do it, especially since there was need. And so I had a lot of people coming up with obstacle after obstacle that I had to get over. And so those of you who are familiar with Los Angeles, you might be aware there's a lot of money in the area. So I got a lot of donations for the things that we were able to do. For instance, I got somebody to donate a van so that we could pick, with transportation is a big issue for those who are living in poverty, and all of the students were living in poverty. Transportation was a big issue. So can we get a van donated? Yes, got one. And then as we're sitting in one of the meetings, somebody said, well, we can't use the van unless we have insurance. And so one of my colleagues throws their hands up. That's it. This is over. We can't do it then. We don't have insurance. I was just like, if we got the van donated, I think we can get the insurance paid for through donation. So let's see if we can do that. And so we did. But again, the point is, the things that we're proud of, the things that we accomplish often don't come easily. We often do experience stress as we're trying to achieve. So that's normal, that's natural, and it's inevitable. So let's talk about how we can manage this stress in a way that is useful for us. I'm going to show you now this short video. It's just over 8 minutes from the previous talk I gave. So it's just going to go over just basically what is psychological stress. It's going to define stress, and then it's going to go over some of the anatomy basics, anatomy and physiology with regards to stress. This is a classic definition that was first coined in 1984. By psychologists Lazarus and Folkman. And so let's take a look at their definition of stress and then break it down a little bit. Lazarus and Folkman define stress as a particular relationship between the person and the environment that is appraised by the person as taxing or exceeding his or her resources and endangering their well-being. So I want to point out a few things. One is the idea of this is a particular relationship between the person and the environment. Lazarus and Folkman are talking about an interaction between that person and the environment that they are in. This is something dynamic. It is not static. It is something that changes over time. And again, it's about that interaction. There are some individuals, those of you who've ever been around infants, and I'm going to assume all of you have been around infants at some point, you know that they're all born a bit different. And some are born with a very mild kind of temperament, like not very reactive to what's going on in the environment around them. And some babies are born very reactive and crying at every little thing and have disruptive kind of rhythms and so on. And how it is that we naturally respond, the good news is, can be mitigated. But there are some individuals who do experience less stress because, again, it's that relationship between that person, their temperament, their personality, and the environment, okay? And then here's where we have control. This is the good news. That is appraised by the person as exceeding his or her resources and endangering their well-being. That sounds very scary, but the good news is the appraised part. That is where we have some control. So here we have a saber-toothed tiger. As our species evolved, we evolved to recognize a threat like a saber-toothed tiger, okay? And this is obviously a threat. This is something that you want to respond immediately to. You don't want to have to think about it and to go, oh gosh, how sharp are those teeth? Instead, what we do is we have an immediate reaction. Hold on. There we go. We have an immediate reaction, and that immediate reaction is the stress response: fight, flee, or freeze. The stress response evolved to protect us from immediate threats, like a tiger coming into our immediate environment, like an earthquake and buildings falling and things like that. We evolved to respond to an immediate threat without having to think about it, with our brain going into automatic, and we're either going to run or we're going to fight or we're going to freeze. What fighting does is it gets us out of there. I'm sorry, no, fighting doesn't get us out of there. Fighting gets us to hopefully take down the threat. Fleeing gets us out of there and out of the situation. And then freezing, interestingly, what that does is that has us immobilizing ourselves And also becoming more aware of what's going around us. And again, this happens automatically sometimes when somebody is in an emergency situation. They will involuntarily freeze, be very much aware of what's going on around them. But interestingly, a lot of predators, such as a saber-toothed tiger, will respond to movement, and they don't see as well when their prey is motionless. So this evolved as a means of protecting us, and this is a good thing. When it's not a good thing is when we appraise non-threats as threats, which is something that we have a tendency to do in our modern lives. And when we do that, we trigger what's called an alarm phase. So there's actually three phases to the fight or flight response. The first phase is the alarm phase, when we have perceived something as a threat, whether it's a dog running loose in the neighborhood, or whether it's your boss telling you, I'd like you to stay a little bit later today to get some work done. And you're like, I have to get the kids, I have to get dinner on, I've got mother-in-law coming over today. You might perceive that as a threat. And again, we're going to talk about your choice in that regard. When you perceive something as a threat, even when it's not, your body responds as if it is a threat. And so that's when fight, flee, or freeze is automatically triggered. Your body is mobilized to address the matter, or immobilized to avoid detection. Now, the second phase is the resistance phase. This is when you have the threat has not gone away. The perceived threat has not gone away. Let's say you have constant stress at work, and again, you are perceiving it as a threat. When you go into phase 2, your temperature tends to run a bit higher, your blood pressure goes up, you're breathing more shallowly. Interestingly, your ability to resist illness goes up. What you're doing is you're depleting your body's resources at this point. So your ability to resist illness actually goes up a bit, but if this continues, it can cause problems. Let me go back a moment. If you resolve the threat at this point, you might have a dip in your health briefly. You might get momentarily ill. You might need to rest, and then you go back to baseline. But if it doesn't resolve and you go into phase 3, your body and mind are depleted, and then you have an increased risk for more serious illness or collapse. And that's what we want to avoid if we possibly can. And again, this is for prolonged stress that isn't resolved. And what's happening here, this is a basic model for the nervous system. All of you are aware of the central nervous system, which is the brain and the spinal cord. And then we have the peripheral nervous system, which is made up of the autonomic nervous system, which has to do with your organs and glands, and the somatic nervous system, which is the voluntary movement of skeletal muscles. That autonomic nervous system is divided into sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. The sympathetic nervous system is what gets us in the fight or flight response, and it mobilizes us for action, and it's really awesome, and I'm glad that we have it. It helps us out. The parasympathetic is our rest and digest system. It is also associated with freezing, and it helps us conserve energy. All right, so moving on, again, sympathetic, fight or flight. Parasympathetic, calming, rest and digest, conserves energy, and also has to do with the freeze response. Now, this is where we're going to be focusing much of our talk from now on. What we want to do is avoid activating that sympathetic nervous system that is activated when we perceive something as a threat. My boss says, I need you to stay late, and I don't want to. And also, this might be interfering with my personal life. And if I perceive it as a threat, I'm going to be triggering that fight or flight system. If I perceive it differently, I might be able to instead, or if I purposely activate my parasympathetic nervous system, I might be able to avoid some of those negative effects of stress. So let's take a look at effects of stress. So when we perceive an event as a threat, we are more likely to experience those unfavorable effects of stress, such as ill health in the short or long term. The stress response, when the sympathetic nervous system is activated, does in fact depress our immune system response. So we are more at risk for illness. We're more at risk for chronic illness, premature death. All of this is awful. Psychological effects are that we become more irritable, more anxious. We might lose enjoyment. If your friend calls you up and says, "Hey, let's meet for coffee," and you're thinking, "Oh my God, one more demand on my time." Okay, that's not enjoyable, right? And you like this person and you want to enjoy them and their presence in your life. But if you are experiencing the unfavorable effects of stress, it reduces your ability to do so. Also, people may have an inability to focus. I hear a lot of people who are under stress use the word overwhelm. That is reflecting an inability to focus. And there can also, of course, be relationship strain with your coworkers, relationship strain with your family, and again, loss of enjoyment generally. So those are the unfavorable effects of stress that has a good PR team. Most people are aware of those. Let's take a look at the favorable effects of stress, which are less well known. The favorable effects of stress, when you perceive an event to be a challenge, think like an athlete challenges themselves to, let's say they're a runner, to beat their last time. That's a challenge. You're going to have the energy to conquer your problems. You're going to have increased motivation, more pleasant emotions. Also, you're going to be able to demonstrate more courage and increased sociability. So look, again, I gave the example of the loss of enjoyment, not, somebody wants to meet me for coffee. Oh my God, we're not right now. But if you're managing your stress differently, you might be able to enjoy it and do that. I'm going to give you a brief example from when I was in college. This was a different time. I'm an older person. When I was in college, the campus was open 24/7. And I was taking an art class, and I was so excited about this project. It was 2 a.m. I was awake. I couldn't sleep because I was excited. Now, notice that the symptoms are similar, whether it's unfavorable or favorable effects of stress. If it's unfavorable effect of stress, you might not be sleeping because you're ruminating on something, right? But if it's the favorable effect of stress, you might not be able to sleep because you're so excited about this thing. So what I did, it was 2 a.m. I went to campus and I went and worked on my project until the sun came up. I was experiencing pleasant emotions. When people actually showed up after the sun came up, I was excited to talk with them about what I was doing. I had energy. Of course, I was younger then, and I do think I crashed later that day. but again, your body responds differently depending upon how you think about stress. If you are experiencing more of the favorable effects of stress, you are less likely to have your blood vessels constricting. You're less likely to have those problematic hormones going through your body, like cortisol, at the levels that they are when you're experiencing the unfavorable effects of stress. How you think about stress impacts your physiology. Your mindset influences whether you experience more unfavorable or favorable effects of stress. My goal for you and for me is to be more like this levitating avocado, okay, and to be more calm and experience those more favorable effects of stress. And we have choices with regards to that. So that's what I'm going to talk about. We don't have a choice in terms of what a lot of things that happen in our life, but how we think about them, how we respond to them, that is where we have power. That is where we have choice. So if you'll recall from the little video I showed you just a moment ago, the words appraisal and perceived were presented. Appraisal is referring to emotions that result from our evaluations of events, people, information. And so you have control over how you appraise the events that are occurring in your life. Perception is referring to how we select, organize, and interpret information. You have control over what you select to pay attention to. You have control over how you interpret an event. So appraisal and perception work in concert with one another in helping us to manage our stress well. Let's take a look at that. If you appraise an event as a threat and perceive it to be outside of your control, you're going to experience more of the negative effects of stress. If you appraise an event as being a challenge, again, think like an athlete. How can I get through this successfully? How can I beat my last time, etc. If you appraise something as a challenge and focus on what you can control, that's part of perception. What am I selecting to attend to? You are more likely to experience the more favorable effects of stress. So again, this is where we have a choice. If an event occurs and you decide this is a threat, and I have here just a little montage of, somebody in the office getting with people approaching them, a dog barking, putting together a birthday party, and there's a lot going on in our lives. And so there's always a lot going on in our lives. So how are you thinking about that? Are you thinking about the lot that's going on in our lives as a threat? And if you are, that is more likely to trigger a fight, flight, or freeze response. Those same events looked at as a challenge and focusing on what you can control tends to result in feeling more capable, more in control. So we're going to take a look now at choices and actions. I'm just going over 3 for the purpose of this talk. There are many, many other ways that you can take small actions to have a big impact in your life, but we're just going to talk about 3 of them today. The first one is going to be appraisal and perceived control. The next one is about optimism. And many people don't understand optimism, so we're going to talk about what I mean when I say optimism as a psychologist, okay? And then we're going to take a look at how to activate your parasympathetic nervous system. And we're going to have some practice with that before you go today. So let's take a look. With appraisal and perceived control, your first choice, you have the choice to appraise an event to be a threat and outside of your control and experiencing more of the unfavorable effects of stress, or you can appraise an event to be a challenge and focused on what you can control. Again, and then in those instances, you're going to experience the more favorable effects of stress. Now, I do want to point out, we all have bad things happen. And again, I want to make it clear, there is a lot that happens outside of our control. But if we attend to what we can control, and if we attend to those things we can view as a challenge, we are going to get through those stressful times in a more favorable way. And that's the goal. So our self-talk influences appraisal and perception. So here we have the same event. I start the semester with approximately 300 new students every semester, and I'm a little nuts. I give them all. Yes, the avocado is actually levitating, Tom. Sorry, I just noticed that Tom wrote that. And so it's a GIF. It does move. So back to the grading pile. So the grading pile isn't, I give six essays for each of my classes. 6 times 300 is a lot of essays that I'm grading. And so I can look at that and I can say, this is overwhelming, this is monstrous, why do I do this to myself? Because it works well for the students to have that. And so if I look at it as monstrous, I'm reacting as I would as if a saber-toothed tiger walked into my environment, and I'm seeing this as a threat to my mental health, a threat to my time, a threat to my relationships. I'm more likely to be irritable, anxious, etc. If I look at that same pile and I say, you know what, this is challenging, but I can do it. Let me break it down into smaller tasks. Let me just grade 10 essays a day per class. Let me make sure that these are coming in at different times. I'm focused on what I can do. I'm focused on making sure that I'm attending to the challenge part of this event and not perceiving it as a threat. Here's another example. Let's say that you have a work deadline plus family obligations. Who doesn't? We all do. We have pulls from multiple parts of our lives. Our lives are multifaceted. And so if, for instance, somebody has a work deadline plus these family obligations going on at the same time, if they appraise this as a threat, their self-talk might be something like, I'm going to get fired and fail parenting. That is not useful. But when the person does that, when they appraise this, they evaluate the situation as threatening, focused on what they can't control, this feels overwhelming, they're more likely to panic, freeze, and feel overwhelmed. All of us are. I should use we, not you or them. We all can do this. If you take that same issue, work deadline plus family obligations, and engage in self-talk that says, I can manage this. I can do this. Let's break this down. You're more likely to be aroused, more likely to be focused, more likely to be energized. So the first choice is to attend to your self-talk. Appraisal influences your emotional responses. If you appraise a situation as more challenging, you're going to have more positive emotional responses. You're going to feel better. Your self-talk influences your appraisal. So what I would like you to do on your own after this talk is maybe just attend to your self-talk. We all have inner dialogues, inner monologues. If you have an inner dialogue, it's a different thing. We all have inner monologues going on all the time. We are always talking to ourselves. If you stop, listen, attend to how you're talking to yourself, attend to how it is that you're appraising these situations, and notice how the way you feel changes. All right. That's the first choice. Second choice, pardon me, I need a sip of my water. Second choice is I want to encourage you to adopt an optimistic mindset. So let's first take a look at what optimism is and what it is not. Optimism and pessimism are not what most people say, which is the half is glass. People who are optimistic see a glass as half full. People who are pessimistic see a glass as half empty. That's not how most psychologists define optimism and pessimism. It's much more complex than that. Optimism and pessimism are explanatory styles. So, how do we explain good and bad events in our lives? How you explain the pattern, your general pattern, how you explain good and bad events reflects whether you are more optimistic or more pessimistic. So let's take a look. Let's say that there's a stressful event. Let's say that, I'll just use myself. I failed to meet a deadline at work. Dang it. I really wanted to get that done. I didn't get it done. I had too much going on, whatever. I didn't get it done. That's a stressful event in and of itself because now things pile on. If I'm being pessimistic, let's take that first. I might engage in self-talk. I might explain the situation. I didn't meet the deadline because I'm a failure and I'm never going to succeed. That just feels bad saying that. I don't even like to say that, even as an example. What you're going to experience is more negative emotions. You're going to feel more out of control. If you're a failure, I want you to notice this. A failure will affect other things in your life. If you say to yourself, I'm a failure, I suck, I'm never going to succeed, that generalizes those bad feelings to other parts of your life. Okay, so a pessimist, when they come across something that they don't want, that is unfavorable, a stressful event, they're more likely to blame themselves, make it about them. They're more likely to say, they're more likely to explain in such a way that reflects stability, something that isn't going to change. If you're a failure, that doesn't change real easily from moment to moment. It also affects other things they do. An optimist, the optimist takes the opposite approach at explaining the very same situation. I took on too many less important tasks before the project was due. That's why I failed to meet the deadline. I want you to notice it's not about the optimist as a person. This isn't, I'm a failure. This is, oops, I made a bad decision. Okay. It's not about me as a person. It's external and it's changeable. When an optimist comes across an unfavorable, undesirable event, they go into problem-solving mode. They go into, how can I make this better next time? So the optimist says, it's not about me as a person. The optimist says, this is about something that is external to me as a person. I made a bad decision. I had too many things going on. Guess what? I can make different decisions next time. It's not about me as a person. Also, the optimist, when something bad happens, says, is about this one situation. Again, the pessimist, I'm a failure. That affects everything. The optimist, oops, made a bad decision. That's specific to this one situation. It's contained, okay? And then it doesn't affect everything else that they do, and it isn't stable. Now let's take a look at something favorable that happens. Met the deadline, did well on a project. Somebody said, good job, woohoo. All right, so the pessimist, poor pessimist, the pessimist explanation could be something like, well, anybody could have done it. I was lucky it just wasn't a harder project. The poor pessimist doesn't let themselves feel pride in their accomplishments. The poor pessimist takes the approach the optimist takes to unfavorable events and applies it to favorable events. The optimist says, just this one time. I'm sorry, the pessimist says, just this one time. That's why I did well. Specific to this situation, not about me as a person. I was just lucky, okay? And it's specific to the situation. It's not going to last long. The next project I might not be so lucky. And you will hear pessimists often say things like, good things don't last, and that is a very pessimistic approach to explaining events. The optimist. Optimist met the deadline, did well on the project. People said, good job. The optimist says to themselves, I'm a hard worker. I learn quickly and I manage my time well. Boy, I feel proud just saying that out loud. And so the optimist, when something good happens, and again, I want to make it clear this, I'm dramatizing a little bit for effect. It's not narcissistic, but it's going to come across that way perhaps. The optimist says, it's about me. That's why things went well. That's why I met my deadline, because of me. And if it's because of me, it is stable and it affects other things I do. The optimist and pessimist take opposite approaches to explaining favorable and unfavorable events. The pessimist takes the approach to explaining favorable events that the optimist uses for unfavorable. The pessimist takes the approach of explaining unfavorable events the way that the optimist explains favorable events. And so what I'm going to ask you to do is to focus on being more optimistic. Why? Optimists achieve more. Optimists experience more positive emotions. Optimists, as they get older, again, I want to make it clear, something's going to get all of us, but as we get older, the optimists are less likely to experience the chronic illnesses that tend to show up in middle age and older age, okay? People who live to 100 are all optimists. The pessimists aren't making it there. So I do want to support you as much as possible to work on becoming more optimistic, okay? And the optimists, like I said, they achieve more. When people take on challenges like running marathons, climbing mountains, starting a new business, or changing their career, they tend to be more optimistic. It's the optimistic folks who tend to achieve more. Because again, when a problem comes up, what do? They go into problem-solving mode. When something good happens, what do? They say, hey, I did that, and they're proud, and that pride seeps into and generalizes to the rest of their life, because if it's about me, then, and I am the one stable component of my life, it is going, and that I am a hard worker, I learn quickly, etc. That affects other aspects of my life, and I feel good, and I'm going to try more. So adopting an optimistic mindset promotes us going into problem-solving mode, and we're less likely to feel overwhelmed and less likely to feel hopeless, okay? Again, we're all going to experience stress, but how do we want to manage it? Optimists, again, tend to experience more positive emotions. If you're experiencing more positive emotions, you're going to feel calmer, you're going to feel more capable, you're going to be more sociable. Also, I just want to say, as an introvert, that doesn't mean you have to be sociable, okay? That there's a balance there between social time and solitude, which solitude is good as well. But just be aware that you're going to be more likely to be sociable when you are experiencing more positive emotions. So actions to take. I want you in your own time to practice noticing how you explain favorable and unfavorable events in your life. If you notice you have a more pessimistic pattern, don't despair. Instead, I suggest that you just take a look at it and work on readdressing the explanation. I explained that in a way that's really pessimistic. How can I change that? Go back to these examples and start again. And if initially when you attend to self-talk and you try to change it, it's going to feel foreign because that hasn't been your lifelong habit. It's going to feel uncomfortable at first, but over time, if it becomes your habit, it can become your default. And again, you're going to experience those positive effects of changing that self-talk. So practice using an optimistic style. Last but not least, I want to encourage you to activate your parasympathetic nervous system on a regular basis. Stress is additive, meaning that, let's say that I woke up late, my alarm didn't, I forgot to set my alarm last night. Now I'm late, I'm rushing, now I'm in the middle of traffic, and now I'm late for my first meeting, which then affects the next meeting, and so on. Stress is additive. When we experience a little bit of stress and then we experience more, it becomes bigger, bigger, and bigger. And when that happens, you're experiencing more of those negative effects of stress. You're experiencing more of those stress hormones that are not so good for you in the long term going through your body. However, if you activate your parasympathetic nervous system on a regular basis, you're going to have less reactivity to those stressful situations. You're going to respond more calmly. If you're stuck in traffic, again, take a look at how you're appraising the situation. What can I control? Let me send a quick text to my boss and let them know that I'm running late and I'm stuck in traffic. I've handled it. Let's turn on the music and sing to the songs that are on the radio because I can't move the traffic. What can I focus on? I can focus on my immediate environment. I can focus on making sure that my boss knows that I'm running late, and I can do some breathing exercises, etc., to help me to relax and calm down. Focus on what I can control. Recognize that this is a challenge. The challenge might be simply, how can I get through this traffic jam and feel good and experience positive emotions, and recognize that everybody's in the same situation I am, and we can't change that. But what's going on in my car? I am in control of that. All right, so I want us to practice together. So we're going to be doing another video. Let's see. I believe that I have it checked so you can hear it, so I should be able to just click it and have it go. But if you
make yourself comfortable in your seat, adjust as needed. Close your eyes or focus on the mandala on the screen in front of you. Breathe in and just notice your thoughts. Notice your feelings. Don't do anything about them. Just notice. Exhale slowly through your mouth. Allow your thoughts and feelings to come and go with the rise and fall of each breath. Breathe in. Breathe out. Turn your attention to any parts of your body that feel tense. Breathe in. As you breathe in, relax those tense areas. Breathe in. Breathe out. Now, gently bring your attention back to your surroundings. Feel your body's contact with your seat. Notice your position. What noises do you hear? When you are ready, open your eyes.
Okay. Oops. How was that? Can you hear me now? We want more.
Yes.
You have more. Okay, I've got two more. All right. So that was just again, that was just a very brief. It was just over a minute long. Kind of check in with yourself and your body, and just noticing what you're feeling. So let's try another one. This one is called box breathing. This some of you might be familiar with the technique. So essentially, you breathe in through your nose, hold, and then breathe out through your mouth and hold. And I'm going to direct you to do that about 3 times. So this is something that can be done. It was that was over a minute. Yes, Andrea. This is something that can be done in the car. This is something that can be done at a meeting. Let's say that you're at a stressful meeting and you want to activate that parasympathetic nervous system. Take a moment and do this box breathing, and it should help activate that parasympathetic nervous system. So let's give the box breathing a try.
Breathe in. Hold. Breathe out through your mouth. Hold. Breathe in through your nose. Hold. Breathe out through your mouth. Hold. Last time. Breathe in. Hold. Breathe out. Hold. And now breathe normally.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed that as well. Robin wrote that she likes leaves on the stream exercises as well. You know, I'm not familiar with leaves on the stream, but if anybody, take a look at it if Robin recommends it. I'm sure that it's valuable and good. But also, I recommend as well Insight Timer. Those of you who have apps on your phone, you can download the app Insight Timer, and there are literally hundreds of free meditations, free exercises. You can some are. I have a program that I use sometimes when I go to sleep at night, and it is music that is designed specifically for sleeping. I never get through it. One of them is over 2 hours long. And so I've never heard the whole thing because I always fall asleep ahead of time. So that's Insight Timer for those of you who are interested. A lot of free resources there as well. Okay, lastly, I'm going to take you through an exercise that is about addressing the self-talk. So this is just about practicing talking to yourself similarly to the way you might talk to your best friend. When we engage in negative self-talk, again, we experience more negative emotions. We might run our anxiety, for instance. We might get ourselves ruminating on things. But if we talk to ourselves like our best friends, we are more likely to, being kinder to ourselves helps us to be kinder to others as well. And again, we're more likely to feel calmer and more capable. You would never say to your friend who didn't meet a work deadline, "You're a failure, you suck." But is that somehow how some of us might talk to ourselves? Talk to yourself in the same way you might talk to your own friend. Be kinder to yourself, just as you would be kind to your friend. You are worth as much as everybody else is worth. You are worth as much as your friends. Talk to yourself kindly, and also in a way that promotes feeling confident and assured. So let's take a look at self-talk.
Self-talk. Research studies show that self-talk is beneficial when it's positive and kind. For this exercise, I want you to focus on your self-talk. We all have inner monologues. If we talk to ourselves like we talk to our friends, we experience more positive emotions and we're more likely to be kinder to others. We can remind ourselves we are capable of managing our challenges. Think back to the start of this presentation when I asked you to think about what you've accomplished, what you got through to achieve your goals. When we remind ourselves that we are capable, our bodies respond with less stress reactivity, increased energy, more motivation. We're more likely to be social, have more pleasant emotions, and experience more optimistic thinking. Finally, a series of studies by Noss and others from 2014 showed that we are better able to regulate our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors when under stress and when we refer to ourselves in the third person. Many of you might be familiar with Ted Lasso on TV. There's a character on that show named Colin Hughes who says often, "I am a strong and capable man." I am so glad he says that to himself. That's very positive. That is very good self-talk. At the same time, Noss and his colleagues have found that if Colin just tweaked his self-talk a little bit, it might be even more beneficial. So what Colin should be saying, if he wants to get more benefit, would be, "Colin, you are a strong and capable man." So let's practice. Close your eyes for just a moment and think about a current challenge. It can be personal, it can be work-related, it can be small, or it can be large. Doesn't matter, this is yours. Take a moment and silently, what I want you to say to yourself is your own name, followed by, "You can do this." "You've got this." Breathe. Repeat silently. Breathe once again. So let's do this. To yourself, say your name. To yourself, remind yourself, you can do this. Remind yourself, you've got this. Breathe. Repeat silently and breathe. And of course you've got this.
So that's just a little practice on talking to yourself. Let me go back for just a moment, just so that you know, again, I am presenting to you things that I also practice myself. Let's take a look at other ways to activate your parasympathetic nervous system. Again, I just gave you 3 ways to help activate that and to help you to experience more positive emotions, to feel calmer and more in control. But there are lots of other ways. And this is just a few. If you do a Google search for how to activate your parasympathetic nervous system, you're going to get even more. But in terms of what research shows that the following, again, and more, are very useful. So meditating, you don't have to spend an entire hour every day meditating. You can meditate for just a few moments, and again, there's an additive effect. And you can feel better and feel calmer just by doing that for a few minutes. So again, using myself as an example, I meditate for about 5 or 10 minutes right before going to sleep every night. Every once in a while, I want to skip it, and I find that I get agitated and I can't sleep. So it's now I think I've classically conditioned myself to have to meditate before I go to sleep, and so I do that, and I sleep really well. And so I find this very useful, but I'm only doing 5 or 10 minutes a day. I'm not doing, these marathon meditation sessions, and I'm not making myself do 30 minutes. I'm doing what works for me. Ask yourself, how can I make this work for me? Yoga. I also do yoga most every day. I do skip that every once in a while. And my minimum that I do is 10 minutes. And that is my minimum, because if I'm feeling like I'm going to skip it, I can say to myself, Natasha, it's 10 minutes. You can do 10 minutes. 30 minutes sometimes feels like too much, especially if I've got work waiting for me, etc. So I can do 10 minutes and then jump in the shower. And again, what I have found is that even that 10 minutes several times a week has my body feeling better, has me feeling calmer, and I not only enjoy it, and I'm really happy that I did that, and went on the days that I didn't skip it, I'm really happy I did that. I find that, again, a little bit of investment has a big impact, especially if it's done, and so here's the key, especially if it's done consistently over time. Other ways, cuddling your pet, acupuncture, massage, nature walks. I go on nature walks often. I'm very lucky. I live a mile from one of our rivers. And so I go on nature walks pretty regularly. I also do bird watch. I have feeders out so that I can watch the birds. Turns out birds don't like being watched, so you kind of have to be sly about that. I engage in gardening, other hobbies that you can engage in as well: woodworking, knitting, drawing, painting, playing an instrument, singing. Research shows you don't have to sing well. I sing in my car when I am in a traffic jam. I turn on the oldies station and I sing along. I want to make this clear. It's a really good thing when nobody else is in the car with me when I do that, because I cannot hit a key for the life of me, or sing in tune for the life of me. I no training whatsoever, and it shows, but man, I enjoy it and I get into it and it's fun. And then also mantras. Mantras and affirmations, again, and prayers as well. All of those are related, and each of those can work equally well for, again, prayers, phrases that you say to yourself that are positive, reminding you that you are safe, that you are grounded. Again, coupling that with some breathing exercises can be really, really good. So all of these, anything that gets you also into a state of flow. Flow was discovered by Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi many, many, many years ago. And it's that experience that you have when you lose a sense of time. Your emotions are actually neutral. It's not necessarily positive or negative. It's a neutral kind of emotional state. You lose a sense of time. You're completely focused and engaged in what you're doing. That is flow. And people can experience that when they're working. They can experience that when they are engaged in their hobbies, and so on. And what research shows that the more flow experience you have, again, the less stress reactive you're likely to be. So again, in summary, for choice number 3, activating your parasympathetic nervous system, again, consistently over time, may lessen your reactivity to stressful situations. I suggest that you take one action from the previous slide and just practice it once a day. Give yourself 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever works for you. And then over time, see if you can increase the number of activities or the duration as you see fit. So I'm hoping, now that we are at the end of the talk, I'm hoping that you feel calmer and more in control. I'm hoping that you understand psychological stress a little bit better. I'm hoping that you've had a change in terms of how you think about stress. Stress in and of itself isn't a bad thing. We can manage it and experience more favorable parts of stress by managing our thoughts and feelings with practice. And I hope that you've been encouraged to take small, consistent action for impactful, positive changes. If you have, I'm going to close this slideshow in just a moment. If you have questions, we have about 5 more minutes, so I will open this up for questions as well. But if you have more questions outside of this talk, you can email me here or at my business. If it's personal and private and you don't want Los Rios, because they see all of our email, you can email me at Lotus Thrive as well. But again, I want to point out this wasn't this is not therapy. This is just mental wellness and mental health education.